My daughter looked me straight in the eye at Dubai airport and pressed something on her phone. In an instant, my boarding pass vanished from the screen. She grabbed her designer bag, turned away from me, and walked straight ahead, leaving me.
Shut up!
There no ticket, no phone, no wallet, and no way to get home. My heart was pounding so hard I felt like I might collapse under the bright airport lights. People rushed past me with rolling suitcases and sleepy children, but all I could hear was the cold echo of my daughter's voice. "You should have stayed out of my business, Mom." I stood frozen, trembling. At 64, in a foreign country, completely alone. Then a tall man in a dark suit approached me and said softly, "Pretend you are my wife. My driver will arrive soon." At that moment, a strange feeling washed over me. Sometimes a stranger can feel safer than your own child. My name is Linda Parker. This Dubai trip, before it even began, had already become the most dangerous chapter of my life. After my husband Mark's sudden death, I raised my daughter, Chloe, alone. Life with Mark had been simple and joyful: beaches, Christmas mornings, quiet mornings with coffee. But after he died, I sacrificed everything to give Chloe a normal life. Then Chloe married Brent Lawson, and everything changed. Brent's polished shoes and perfect smile hid something cold and calculated. Every word he said revolved around money and status. And slowly, Chloe started following his rules. The first warning was small: fewer calls, then constant requests. "Mom, can you send money? Mom, can you watch the dog?" And finally, mentions of the old yellow house the home Mark and I had built 27 years ago. Now, it was being treated as collateral in Dubai. And this was only the beginning. The first 2 days in Dubai felt surreal. Chloe and Brent stayed in their luxurious hotel, while I was in a room nearby, supposedly for convenience. Everything was polished, shiny, and expensive: glass towers, sparkling lights, and people in suits who moved like they owned the world. Chloe acted like nothing was wrong, smiling, holding my hand across the table at dinner, saying, "Mom, Brent wants you here so everyone sees how close our family is. It will help with business." The words sounded sweet, almost convincing, but my instincts screamed danger. Brent watched me constantly, asking questions about the yellow house, my will, and my property papers. I had prepared copies of everything, locking the originals safely at home, but I could feel the trap closing. That night, alone in the hotel room, I stared at the ceiling, thinking of Mark and our life together, trying to understand how my own daughter could become part of a plan that might steal everything I had worked for. The next morning, Chloe insisted on showing me the city, but every street, every restaurant, every polite smile from strangers reminded me that I was far from home, far from safety, and too trusting had become dangerous. The tension in my chest never left. By the third day, unease had settled into my bones. Chloe kept asking about the house papers, her smile too bright, her words too precise. Brent lingered in the background, pretending to check emails, but I knew he was observing me. Every glance, every question felt like a test. I realized that this trip was never about sightseeing or family. It was about control, about bending me into submission. That night, I refused to open the folder Chloe left on the table. I could see Brent's reflection in the polished marble floor, the calculating look in his eyes. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the hotel sheet, remembering Mark, the life we had built together, and the sacrifices I had made for Chloe. Fear gripped me, not for myself but for what my own daughter had become. Was this the same girl who once whispered that I was her best friend on stormy nights? I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths. I needed clarity. I needed a plan. And in that quiet, I realized I couldn't depend on Chloe to act like the daughter. I knew I had to act for myself before it was too late. The next morning, Chloe knocked on my door with that same practiced warmth. "Mom, breakfast is ready, and Brent wants to discuss the paperwork today," she said, placing a tray carefully on the table. I looked at her, my hands shaking slightly, and realized how different she had become. That little girl who used to cling to me during thunderstorms was gone, replaced by a woman who smiled to manipulate. I refused the tray. I don't want to talk about it, I said quietly, my voice firm despite the tremor. Chloe's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before returning. Mom, you're overreacting, she said softly. Overreacting. The word stung, sharp and calculated. I knew then that her entire approach was strategic. Every word, every gesture was meant to pressure me. I refused to fall for it. I left the hotel room, walking the long hallway as if I had a purpose. Each step reminded me of the independence I still had, the control I still commanded over my own life. And then, in the lobby, I saw him, Daniel Reed, standing as calm as ever, his eyes scanning the crowd. Relief flooded me. Safety didn't come from family anymore. It came from strangers who cared more about right and wrong than blood ties. He approached silently, nodding once, reassuring me without words. Together, we moved through the hotel, and for the first time that trip, I felt a flicker of hope. I knew I had allies, and I knew I had to act quickly to protect the only thing that truly belonged to me, the life Mark and I had built, the house that carried every memory of our family. By mid-morning, Daniel had already contacted a trusted lawyer and started the process to secure my documents and accounts. I watched him work, the calm precision in his movements both terrifying and comforting. Every call he made, every instruction he gave, seemed to cut through the chaos Chloe and Brent had created. My heart was still racing, but a small sense of control returned. I realized then that I had underestimated how far they were willing to go, and I also realized how vulnerable I had been, trusting family over intuition. Chloe had planned this meticulously, using my love as leverage, but now I was learning a harsh lesson. Protection wasn't passive. It required action, vigilance, and sometimes help from strangers with no agenda other than justice. Daniel glanced at me once, his eyes softening. "You're stronger than you think," he said. I swallowed hard, unsure if it was meant to reassure me or if he truly believed it. Either way, it was the truth I needed to hear. By the time lunch arrived, the hotel room had transformed from a place of fear into a hub of planning. Lawyer calls, security checks, and embassy confirmations filled the day, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone against the scheme that Chloe and Brent had set in motion. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the Dubai skyline, but inside that room, I felt a light I hadn't known in weeks. Fear was still present, but now it was paired with determination. I wouldn't let them win, not now, not ever. That house, those memories, my dignity, they were mine, and I intended to protect them with everything I had left. As evening approached, Daniel suggested we step out briefly to survey the area and ensure there were no unexpected followers or suspicious activity. I hesitated at first, my legs still shaky from the morning's ordeal, but he was patient and firm. Outside, the Dubai air was warm, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the occasional call of a taxi horn. It was a strange contrast to the tension I had felt inside. Daniel walked slightly ahead, scanning constantly, while I tried to focus on breathing steadily. "The key is to stay visible, stay calm," he said softly. "Panic draws attention. Confidence, even if it's borrowed, can protect you." I nodded, repeating his words internally like a mantra. As we circled the property, I realized how meticulously he observed everything: the position of cameras, the angles of potential escape routes, the exits and entrances. I had spent hours worrying about Chloe and Brent, but now my attention shifted to strategy, observation, and awareness. It was exhausting but empowering. Back inside, Marta had prepared tea and a small plate of snacks. The normalcy of it, the soft clink of porcelain, the warmth of the tea was grounding. I allowed myself a sip, savoring the taste and the momentary calm. Daniel and Susan went over additional documents, checking for inconsistencies, preparing statements, and drafting emergency legal measures. The sense of purpose in the room was tangible. For the first time that day, I felt like a participant, not a victim. As night fell, the city lights glittered like distant stars through the large windows. I leaned back in my chair, letting myself exhale fully. Chloe's betrayal still stung, and the image of her walking away haunted me, but for the first time, I realized that betrayal could be countered, not ignored, not excused, but countered. And I was not alone anymore. That night, sleep came in brief, shallow waves, but they were enough to let me face the next day with eyes open and resolve unbroken. The next morning, Daniel woke early, already reviewing communications from the embassy and security teams. I dressed quietly and joined him in the small office area. The sense of urgency was palpable but controlled. "We need to anticipate their next move," Daniel said. "Chloe and Brent will assume I am just a stranger helping you. They won't expect coordinated legal and security action simultaneously." I listened carefully as he outlined the plan. Contact the airline to flag my ticket as stolen, alert international security for unusual activity on my accounts, and gather witness statements from hotel staff. Susan worked in tandem, drafting statements and confirming timelines. Every small detail mattered. I realized how much I had underestimated the complexity of the situation. It was no longer just about a lost boarding pass or a temporary misplacement. It was premeditated pressure, a network of attempts to manipulate and control. My heart raced, but I tried to steady it, remembering Daniel's advice: visibility, calm, confidence. Around mid-morning, a phone call came from Robert Hale, my lawyer back home. His shocked voice confirmed the seriousness of the situation. "Linda, you were targeted before you even boarded the plane," he said. The knowledge hit me like a wave, a mixture of fear and clarity. I wasn't imagining it. Daniel, Susan, and I discussed the evidence and confirmed the paper trail, the banking anomalies, the previous requests Brent had made. Each revelation added weight but also purpose. I was no longer passive. With their help, I began preparing statements, reviewing emails, documenting each interaction with Chloe and Brent, and ensuring everything was recorded and time-stamped. By afternoon, a clear picture emerged. Chloe and Brent had planned this long before our trip, and now, faced with resistance, they were likely scrambling to adapt. Daniel's presence was steadying, not just physically but mentally. His calm, logic, strategic thinking, and protective measures gave me a rare sense of security. For the first time in hours, I felt that while Chloe may have betrayed me, I was not powerless. I was armed with allies, knowledge, and a strategy. The yellow house, my memories, my life, these were not objects to be stolen easily. That afternoon, as the sun lowered over the Dubai skyline, I felt a small but significant shift. Fear was still present, but courage was growing. And I knew that whatever Chloe and Brent tried next, I would face it with eyes wide open and a resolve that they could not easily break. By evening, Daniel arranged a secure video call with the embassy and my home lawyer. I watched as Robert Hale's familiar face appeared on the screen, his expression a mixture of shock and determination. "Linda, this confirms what I feared," he said, scrolling through documents. "They were planning to pressure you into signing, and the evidence shows intent." Susan chimed in, explaining the timing of the temporary asset transfer document and the suspicious behavior of Chloe and Brent. Each piece of evidence built a clear pattern of premeditation. My throat tightened as I realized just how carefully they had planned everything. Every question about the yellow house, every subtle suggestion about estate planning, every request for documents, it was all part of a design to manipulate and coerce me while abroad. I felt anger, sadness, and disbelief swirl inside me, but Daniel's calm presence reminded me that panic would not help. He guided me through the process of documenting everything, ensuring that every phone call, every interaction, and every email was time-stamped and securely stored. We created backup copies on encrypted drives. The weight of the situation was heavy, yet structured planning gave it form. I realized how much I had been operating on trust alone, assuming my daughter loved me enough not to plan harm. That assumption had left me vulnerable. Now, with strategy and support, I could reclaim control. Late in the evening, Daniel suggested a brief walk on the terrace. The Dubai lights shimmered like diamonds across the water. The breeze carried warmth, and for a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "But being prepared means you're already ahead." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and resolve. Chloe and Brent had underestimated me. They assumed kindness and age made me weak. But I had allies, I had evidence, and I had the determination to protect what was mine. As night fell, I sat quietly, reflecting on Mark, on the house, and on my daughter's choices. Pain and betrayal mingled with newfound clarity. I understood now that family love could be manipulated, but preparation and awareness could not. Tomorrow, the real work would begin, protecting my assets, ensuring my rights, and confronting the reality that some people value control over connection. And while fear lingered, a spark of strength ignited within me, promising that I would not be taken advantage of again. The next morning, I woke to the soft hum of the air conditioner and sunlight slipping through the curtains. For a brief, fleeting moment, I forgot where I was, but then reality hit, and panic threatened to rise again. Mart had already set out breakfast on a tray, and Daniel was downstairs, preparing for the day. He came to me and spoke gently, "Linda, today we take steps to secure everything fully. Your accounts, your travel documents, and your legal position." I followed him downstairs, my hands trembling but my mind clearer than the day before. Susan was already reviewing notes, highlighting documents, and coordinating with the lawyers. Daniel handed me a secure phone and explained, "This line is dedicated to you. Your home lawyer, the embassy, and our team can be reached instantly." As I grasped the phone, I realized the weight of dependency I had carried for so long, trusting family blindly, assuming love would protect me. But now, with Daniel's guidance, that weight shifted. It was a strange comfort, knowing I was no longer alone in facing the calculated betrayal of my daughter and her husband. Over the next few hours, we documented every interaction, every message, and every attempt at manipulation. Each record became a shield, a proof of intent and premeditation. I began to see the depth of the scheme. Brent's repeated inquiries about the yellow house, Chloe's sudden requests for documents, and their timing during the Dubai trip, it all pointed to one objective. They had counted on my emotional attachment and my desire for family peace to override caution. But with Daniel and Susan, I could finally see through the veil. By afternoon, temporary travel documents were being processed, the embassy had begun official reports, and my bank accounts were fully secured. I felt a mix of exhaustion and empowerment. I had been stripped of trust, but I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. Sitting for a moment on the terrace, overlooking Dubai's glittering skyline, I let myself feel the sting of betrayal and the warmth of newfound protection simultaneously. Daniel approached and said, "Tomorrow, we begin moving beyond defense. We take action to ensure they cannot exploit you again." I nodded, a sense of resolve settling in. Chloe and Brent had underestimated me. They had assumed kindness equaled weakness, that loyalty and love would be their leverage. But they were wrong. And for the first time in a long time, I believed I could protect myself, my assets, and my dignity without relying solely on blind trust or hope. That evening, as the Dubai skyline glittered with city lights, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Daniel had arranged a quiet room for me, away from the chaos of phones, emails, and urgent messages. I sat by the window, watching the planes descend, each one a reminder of journeys and departures. But this time, my journey was inward, a path to reclaiming control. My phone buzzed with messages from the embassy confirming progress, and Susan updated me on legal drafts ready for review. Every small step felt like a brick in a fortress I was building around myself. But beneath the relief, anxiety still lingered. I couldn't shake the thought of Chloe and Brent, how cunning they were, how they had embedded themselves into my life under the guise of love. I realized that protection wasn't just legal, it was psychological, emotional. Daniel noticed my distant stare and said softly, "Linda, strength comes not only from action but from understanding the threat fully. You are learning that now." I nodded, realizing he was right. That night, I penned my own notes, a record of suspicions, observations, and plans. Every memory of deceit, every feeling of doubt, I documented meticulously. By doing so, I converted fear into strategy. Sleep was fleeting, filled with fragmented dreams of confrontation, yet morning brought clarity. Susan arrived with a detailed plan for the next phase: meetings with authorities, asset inspections, and securing evidence of manipulation. "We need to move fast," she said. "Every delay gives them leverage." I felt a surge of purpose. My role was no longer passive. I was not just defending myself. I was orchestrating a careful countermeasure. As we reviewed timelines and logistics, I felt a strange combination of exhaustion and exhilaration. The betrayal had been deep, but it had forced me to awaken to vigilance and resilience I hadn't known I possessed. By the afternoon, I was ready to face the next challenge, confronting the situation head-on, gathering undeniable proof, and ensuring Chloe and Brent could not exploit me or my resources ever again. Each plan, each step, was a reclaiming of dignity and control. I realized that for years, I had allowed trust overshadow caution. But now, with meticulous preparation and the support of professionals who genuinely cared, I had found balance between caution and empowerment. That evening, as I looked at the Dubai skyline again, this time, I felt not fear but a steady determination. The journey ahead was daunting, but for the first time, I felt truly capable of navigating it on my own terms. The following morning, sunlight poured over the vast Dubai airport, bouncing off polished floors and glass walls, painting everything in a warm glow. The crowd moved like a river, travelers hurrying with rolling luggage, and yet I felt like I was standing still in the middle of chaos. My daughter had looked at me the night before with that forced, polite smile, pretending everything was normal. But deep down I knew it wasn't. Something had shifted, and I could feel the tension as thick as the humid air. The following morning, sunlight poured over the vast Dubai airport, bouncing off polished floors and glass walls, painting everything in a warm glow. The crowd moved like a river, travelers hurrying with rolling luggage, and yet I felt like I was standing still in the middle of chaos. My daughter had looked at me the night before with that forced, polite smile, pretending everything was normal. But deep down I knew it wasn't. Something had shifted, and I could feel the tension as thick as the humid air. The following morning, sunlight poured over the vast Dubai airport, bouncing off polished floors and glass walls, painting everything in a warm glow. The crowd moved like a river, travelers hurrying with rolling luggage, and yet I felt like I was standing still in the middle of chaos. My daughter had looked at me the night before with that forced, polite smile, pretending everything was normal. But deep down I knew it wasn't. Something had shifted, and I could feel the tension as thick as the humid air. I recalled every detail from the previous day, the whispered conversations, the sly glances, the subtle attempts to manipulate me. Every instinct screamed that Chloe was not the girl I had once known, the little girl who clung to me in the storm, the girl whose laughter had been my joy. Now, she was different, calculating and distant. Brent, her husband, moved with a silent menace, always hovering at her side, a shadow ready to strike at the right moment. I tried to steady my breathing as I approached the check-in counter. Marta had reminded me to remain calm, but my hands still shook slightly. The agent glanced up, her expression polite but perfunctory, as she scanned my documents. I handed her my passport, my heart hammering. Every eye in the terminal seemed to watch me, judging, analyzing, waiting for me to falter. "Everything seems in order, ma'am," she said, finally handing back my passport with a small smile. Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the awareness that the real challenge was yet to come. I moved toward the security check, my luggage rolling silently behind me, each step echoing in my mind like a drumbeat of impending confrontation. Daniel's words from the previous night echoed in my mind. Prepare, anticipate, and protect. Do not underestimate them, but also do not let fear guide you. I clutched my small carry-on tighter, mentally reviewing every possible scenario. Chloe could try anything: diversion, lies, even charm, but I would not let her manipulate me. Again, I was done being the unsuspecting victim. At the boarding gate, I found a quiet corner and sat down, my gaze fixed on the planes lined up on the runway. The sun reflected off the metallic surfaces, dazzling and blinding, and for a moment, I let myself imagine freedom, imagining stepping off the plane in a city where decisions were mine alone. Marta brought over a cup of tea, and I accepted it with a grateful smile. You've been through a lot, she said softly, but you're stronger than you think. Today, you reclaim control. Her words gave me a spark of courage, igniting the resolve I had feared lost. Hours passed slowly. As I waited for the boarding announcement, I watched families embrace, business travelers tap impatiently at their phones, and every glance I stole at Chloe and Brent reminded me of the deception that had led us here. But now, I was not powerless. Daniel had prepared measures to safeguard me. The embassy was ready to intervene if necessary, and I had finally realized that my life was mine to protect. When the boarding call echoed through the terminal, I rose, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of fear and anticipation settle into a sharp focus. Every step toward the plane was deliberate, a declaration of my renewed strength. Chloe and Brent watched silently, perhaps sensing the shift, the newfound determination that burned behind my eyes. As I boarded, I glanced once more at the sprawling airport, the city of Dubai stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls, filled with endless possibilities. I promised myself that I would navigate the storm ahead with clarity, courage, and precision. No longer would I let manipulation dictate my path. Settling into my seat, I took out my notebook, a habit from calmer times, and began jotting down thoughts, plans, and observations. Each word was a step toward reclaiming my power, a reminder that I could still define the narrative of my own life. The engines roared to life, and as the plane lifted off, I felt a mixture of fear, relief, and determination. My daughter and her husband may have tried to control the journey, but the direction of my life was once again in my hands. Each passing cloud outside the window mirrored my growing resolve. By the time the city lights shrank into a distant memory, below, I had drawn a mental map of every possible move, every contingency. The fear was still present, yes, but it no longer dominated me. For the first time since the ordeal began, I felt a sense of control and a glimmer of hope that perhaps the child Chloe had once been could still be reached, and that justice, whatever shape it might take, would be restored. Tonight, in this plane cabin filled with strangers, I realized that survival was more than escaping physical threats. It was reclaiming the heart, the mind, and the authority over my own choices, and I was ready to fight for it. The terminal buzzed with life, but I moved through it with calm focus. Faces passed, each hiding stories, yet I felt the invisible tension connecting us. Chloe leaned against a column, Brent a few steps away. Both alert, both cautious, words were exchanged, careful and loaded, testing boundaries. Slowly, the balance shifted. I was no longer reacting, I was guiding the encounter. Hours seemed like minutes as decisions were made, grudges confronted, and authority reclaimed. Stepping outside, sunlight hit my face, and I felt a quiet triumph. Courage and clarity had carried me through. That night, I finally rested, letting the tension of Dubai slip away. Chloe and Brent's schemes were exposed, their greed clear, their control broken. Daniel and Susan had ensured I was safe, my assets protected, my story recorded. For the first time in months, I felt light, untangled from manipulation. I thought of Mark, of the little house, and the little girl Chloe had once been. Strength had returned to me, hard-earned and unwavering. No one could use fear or love against me again. The city lights twinkled below, a quiet promise of freedom and resilience.